Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, my largest ever book haul. So, as you know, I've just started the Read What Your Own challenge. So I started on the 5th of November. This video, I think, will probably go up a week or two after that. And as is often the case with that challenge, I found that my book buying in the run-up to the challenge has got a bit out of control. And I don't necessarily mind that. As I said in a video the other day, the purpose for me of the Read What Your Own challenge is more about discovering books I've already got than it is about stopping buying books, if that makes sense. I don't have a problem with having lots of books, as you'll know if you've seen my garage library tour video. So I have got a lot of books to go through with you today. I think there are about 130 books that I've bought or been sent over the last few weeks. And there is, I mean, you can't see, but I'm surrounded by little piles of books. I've tried to group things into a kind of logical sense. I put up a post on my community tab the other day saying to people, would you rather have several shorter videos or one long video? And the vote resoundingly was for one long video. So over 900 people voted on that, which is incredible. And 2-to-1 people voted in favour of a one long video. So you asked for it. Here it is. I don't know if I'm going to survive the whole video or if I'm going to have to take a pause at some point. But yeah, it's going to be a long one. But I will try to. I certainly won't be, I don't think, reading out the blurbs off the back of any of the books. But I will definitely try and talk about why I've got each of the books. So as normal, before I get into the rest of the books, I will show you books that I have been sent either by viewers or by publishers and things like that, first of all. So first up, I've got a box down here. And apologies, this video is going to involve a lot of me bending down. So I've got a box here that was very kindly sent to me by one of my viewers, Mike, the other day. So in a couple of recent book haul videos, I've showed books by the author Colin Forbes, who was a British like war and thriller writer, basically. And I'd picked up a couple in a charity shop that were like super cheap. I used to read his stuff back in, I guess, like late 80s, early 90s, and always really enjoyed it. They haven't got like the depth of Le Carré or something like that, but I always thought his spy novels were quite good fun. Anyway, Mike contacted me and said, I've got a big stack of Colin Forbes books, which I'm going to give to a charity shop. Would you like them? And I was like, yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much. So let me go through them. I'll try and group them into, and I have to say, these books are for the most part, in stunning condition. So I'll try and group them into war novels versus spy novels. Hopefully I will manage to do that successfully. So first up we have Avalanche Express with, is that Lee Marvin? I think that's Lee Marvin on the cover there. So that looks good. I haven't, in preparing for this video, I haven't figured out what I'm going to do with the books once I've shown them to you. So we'll figure that out as we go. So Avalanche Express. All of these books, by the way, I've logged in my new spreadsheet and Calibre in that way I showed you of cataloguing my books the other day. Anyway, next up, Double Jeopardy. I don't know if this is a war one or just a spy one, but it's not part of the Tweed series, which most of the spy novels are. The Heights of Zervos. And you can see, like, look at this. Like Mike said he thought he'd read most of these, but the spines of them are immaculate. And this book was published in 1984. So it originally came out in the 70s, but this edition from 1984. The Palermo Ambush. The Stockholm Syndicate. That is a fantastic cover. A bit of naval action and a helicopter. I don't know what's going on with this boat. It almost looks like it's got legs. It's a strange boat. Right. The Stone Leopard. That's another very good cover. Target 5. Year of the Golden Ape, which is a great title. Tramp in Armour, which looks very good. I think this is about tank drivers during the Second World War. Right. Oh, one more war one. The Leader and the Damned, which I think is one of his better known ones, and reasonably thick as well compared to the other ones. And then we get into the Tweed and Co books, so 4 of those. So I've already got a couple of these, and I think I've now got the first 5 or 6 books in the series. So we've got Deadlock. They always had these kind of colourful covers. The Janus Man. The Greek Key, which is about the attempted assassination of Gorbachev, which is fantastic. And Terminal, which I'm going to assume is about some sort of like chemical warfare or something like that. I think I've probably read all of those, but not for a very, very long time. So looking forward to rereading those. And again, Mike, thank you so much for sending that through. Right, I've got these in the wrong order, but another very kind person, David, sent me 3 fantastic looking horror short story collections and some honey from Texas, which is absolutely delicious. So thank you again, David, for that. So the first of those is, and this cover is one of those covers that just creeps me out a bit just looking at it. I don't like looking at it. It's The Secret of Ventriloquism by John Padgett. Isn't that a great cover? Love it. Okay, and then a couple by Laird Barron. So Not a Speck of Light, which I think is his newest collection of short stories. There will be some more Laird Barron later on in the video. And then also Occultation, which I've heard absolutely fantastic things about. So I'm really coming to love Laird Barron as a writer. Really looking forward to reading these. So thank you again very much indeed, David. I really appreciate it. And then I've got a few things. So let me show you. I've got some things from publishers, but let me show you 2 other things first. So the first of those is this, which I bought myself, wasn't sent to me, but this is the new collection from Roberto Pastore, formerly host of the fantastic booktube channel Pastore Time. So this is Graveyards on Other Planets, a poetry collection. I really enjoyed Bert's first poetry collection, Hey Bert, so really looking forward to reading this, and it's beautifully, let me take the receipt out, it's beautifully presented as well. So you've got nice French flaps. And then you've got a picture of Bert there at the back. So yeah, really looking forward to reading this. Right, I'm doing all right so far, but I've barely scratched the tip of the iceberg. So next up, this looks really fun. So this is Billy Boyle by James R. Benn, which is the first in a series of World War II mysteries. So I do buddy reads with my top tier of patrons, the Ollie fans, and Alina, who's a new member of that tier, wanted to read this, so I picked up a copy of this to read with her, hopefully this month. And then a couple from publishers. So in a previous book haul video, I showed a couple of Crimeutopia collection. So this is a regularly published crime short story collection. So the editor, the fantastically named John Connor, sent me the latest one as well, which is You Ain't Read Nothing Yet, which looks very good. So nice collection. I think there's probably about 20 stories in here. So looking forward to diving into that and the other 2 collections at some point. And then Virago, who recently sent me The Stepdaughter by Caroline Blackwood, reached out again and said they've got a new collection of Daphne du Maurier's short stories with an introduction by Stephen King. Now, to my great shame, I've never read Daphne du Maurier. I do have a copy of Rebecca. In fact, I think I've got a paperback copy and a digital copy, but I've never actually read her. So I thought, yeah, I'd love to. I'd really like to read, in particular, The Birds and Don't Look Now, having been, or continue to be, a big fan of the movies of both of those. So anyway, Virago very kindly sent me this lovely hardcover of, what's it called? After Midnight, 13 Chilling Tales for the Dark Hours. So really nicely designed and presented. Look at those lovely end papers. So yeah, really looking forward to reading this. My random pile of books down there is building up. Right, 2 more things then from the authors/publishers pile. So Fever Dreams by Mark Morris. So I reviewed the previous one in this series, which I think was called Elemental Forces. So it's the ABCs of Horror series where Mark Morris is publishing like new horror fiction. And I think I'm right in saying in each book, half of the stories in here are ones where he'd like gone out to the authors and asked them to contribute a story, and the other half are like submissions, basically. They have an open submission process. And certainly I've read 2 of these collections so far. I've read the first one and the 5th one, and they were both really, really great. So if you like, if you want to read new horror short stories, I really recommend this series. And Flame Tube Press, the publisher, very kindly sent me a copy of that. And then finally, I've got a mystery book. So this arrived the other day to my PO box. There is a book inside. There's no note or anything like that. So I don't know if this is a gift. I don't know if it's from an author. I have no idea at all, but it's beautifully packaged. So if you are the person who sent me this, thank you very much. So let me open the bow. Hopefully it's not got anthrax in it or something like that. I'm going to assume that I'm safe, and it hasn't. But yeah, very nicely wrapped. I'm terrible at wrapping things. If you've ever received a book from me or a gift from me, you will know that I'm really, really bad at wrapping stuff. I just have to slap absolutely loads of sellotape around it in order to hold everything together. Okay, so this looks like a submission from the author. So this is a book called Asylums by an author called Thomas Goodyear, which was quite interesting. I can't tell. Is it short stories? No, it's a novel. It's a novel. Let me read you a bit of the blurb. Life as a guard within an asylum for the criminally insane is hard enough, but for James McCartney, it's hell. Whilst coming to terms with the recent murder of his wife, James is left to raise his young daughter alone. Struggling to survive, he begins to feel increasingly trapped within the secluded town of Loveridge Falls. I've skipped the middle bit because it is quite a long blurb. With the imminent arrival of a new inmate threatening to overthrow the asylum status quo, James and Quinn must determine how far this influence spread and find the truth hidden in the fiction of those declared criminally insane. Okay, so it appears that the residents or inmates of this asylum start writing stories and plays and things like that, and there do indeed seem to be plays in here. That is a very interesting concept, isn't it? So yeah, this looks good, and thank you very much, Thomas, for sending this through, and for fantastically beautiful packaging as well. I forgot to say the envelope on the back has this nice stamp saying it's from the Loveridge Falls Asylum for the Criminally Insane. Right, let's put that down there. Okay, so let me quickly do some commandos. So I've had 4 commandos land since I last filmed one of these videos. So I'll very quickly show those, and then I'll get on to the rest of the books. So we've got The Curse of Zelda. So these are little single issue comic books, war comic books, which are always really fun. Time of Terror. Flames of Fear. That's a good cover, isn't it? I like that cover. And Frostbite, which looks like it might be one of the horror ones. At this time of year, around October, they tend to publish some kind of horror-themed ones. So those look fantastic. Let me put that on my commando shelf. I have this little shelf down here where I put my books that I've got in that I'm going to put in a haul video, like new books go there first. And it's just been overflowing. I've had stacks everywhere for the past couple of weeks. Right, let's do some horror next then. So I've got a variety of things here that I picked up from a variety of different places. I have become addicted in the last few weeks to buying books from Vinted, and you will see a number of books today that came from Vinted. So Vinted is like eBay. It's a place where people can sell secondhand stuff. It's typically used for selling clothes, but people do sell books there as well, and I'd managed to forget that. And then my wife reminded me a while ago. And since then, I've been browsing Vinted a lot. And the fantastic thing about Vinted is you can create your own bundles. So if someone is selling a book you like, it goes create a bundle. You look through the rest of their books and you'll usually get a discount like 10 or 15%. Plus they combine postage. And a lot of the books are like only £1 anyway, and then like £2.29 postage seems to be the norm. So if you create a bundle of like 10 books, you're still only paying the £2 postage. So it's ended up being a bit of a problem. Anyway, let me show you some things I've got recently then. So this is one that came from Vinted, and I can't remember what other things I ended up getting with it, but I definitely got a couple of other things with it. So this is The Clean-Up by John Speck and Craig Spector. I think the only thing I've read by Skip and Spector was The Light at the End, their famous New York vampire novel, but this looks good, and a fantastic kind of Paperbacks from Hell style cover as well. going to have to go on the pile down there. This one I didn't get from Vinted. This one I picked up in a local charity shop, and I think this is kind of vaguely collectible. So this is one of the Night Visions series of books, edited by, was it Charles L. Grant? Yeah, edited by Charles L. Grant. So this was, I think in each of the books they'd have 3 different authors and publish horror stories by those authors. So this one has David Morrell, who I've talked about on the channel before, who I really, really like, but I've never read any of his short fiction, so looking forward to that. An author I haven't heard of, Joseph Payne Brennan, and then Carl Edward Wagner, who I have heard of but I've never read, so really looking forward to reading some Carl Edward Wagner as well, and a fantastic Paperbacks from Hell style cover going on there too. Next up, this was a Vinted buy, definitely, that I chucked into a bundle because I'm pretty sure I've read this, but I fancy reading it again. It's White Shark by Peter Benchley, the author of Jaws, who since the publication of Jaws has been desperately trying to recapture the success of that particular book. But his books are always fun, and this one, according to the back, involves a sunken Nazi U-boat as well as a shark. Or maybe the shark part is a reference to the U-boat. I don't know. But anyway, I'm sure it'll be fun. And then next, I've got a few by Shaun Hutson. So this is another case of bundles striking, in that there are at least 2 books here that I've already got. One of them, I think I've got. In fact, I think I might have 2 or 3 copies of both of them already. But it was cheaper to buy the bundle for the book that I wanted than buy it individually. And there are some books here, there's 2 books here that I've ended up within this book haul because of bundles in one case, and because of another reason in the other case. I've ended up buying more than once, so I will flag those to you when I get them. Anyway, first up then is The Skull, which is a really early Shaun Hutson book that I have never read, and I can only assume that this book was out of print when I got into Shaun Hutson. So it was published by Hamlin, and when I got into Hutson, his books were being published by Star, I think. And I think this one must have fallen out of print. And I was conscious that this book existed, but I think I'd always assumed, because I thought I'd read all of Hutson in the 80s, that it was an American retitle of one of his other books, but it's not. It's a book in its own right. So I've never read this. I'm really looking forward to reading it. I love Shaun Hutson. It's a nice slim one. So yeah, this should be fun. And it apparently is about the bloodlust of hell, which definitely sounds like it will be interesting. And then the 2 Hutsons I've already got, that I've now got duplicate copies of, are Death Day, which I remember being super, super fun, and I'm really looking forward to rereading this, and Deadhead, which I read fairly recently and which is absolutely horrible. One of the most horrible books I've ever read. So if you fancy something really, really horribly disturbing, read Deadhead. And then the one I wanted, and I wanted it with this particular cover, because it's a cover I love and was a big fan of when I used to read Shaun Hutson back in the 80s, is Erebus, which is about mad cow disease. But I've always thought that cover was absolutely fantastic. And you just don't get font work like this anymore, do you, on book covers? So yeah, brilliant stuff. Right, okay. Right, what shall I do next? I'm staring around me at all of these piles. Right, let's change gear and do Sweet Valley High. So I went on a bit of a Sweet Valley High buying spree the other day, mostly on Vinted, but I did get a couple of things from eBay as well. A couple of these, I think I'm going to be probably buddy reading with MJ from Reading This Life, who I buddy read Sweet Valley High stuff with every so often. There's at least one more of these ones, which are the super thrillers, which is in the post at the moment. So anyway, we've got No Place to Hide, which is a super thriller, and On the Run. There's also a Super Chillers series, so I definitely need to get some of those at some point once I'm off the book buying ban. And then also I discovered, which I didn't even know these existed, these like omnibus editions, and the one that I first saw, which I just had to get, was this one, which is the Earthquake collection. I had no idea they did like a disaster movie style Sweet Valley High. So hold on, I just want to double check everything's still recording okay. Right, so this is the Earthquake collection, which has Earthquake and Aftershock. So an earthquake hits Sweet Valley. Phenomenal. I cannot wait to read that. And then the other ones are the Winners and Losers collection, which has Jessica Quits the Squad, the Pom Pom Wars, and V for Victory. So this is about the cheerleading squad going to a like cheerleading competition. And then we've got Chateau d'Amour collection, which is I've heard referenced in one of the other of these little trilogies of Sweet Valley High books. I think I must have read the one that was just after this, and they reflected on this, but they go to like a castle in Europe. So it's got Once Upon a Time, To Catch a Thief, and Happily Ever After. And then finally, this one sounds good, the Summer Danger collection, which has got A Stranger in the House and A Killer on Board. So I'm going to read the blurb on this one because it really does sound good. John Marin, a murderer sent to jail by Ned Wakefield, is out and he's after Jessica and Elizabeth Wakefield. So Ned is their father. So this sounds like a bit like a Sweet Valley version of Cape Fear. So that was good. Right, let's do this stack for next. This is a somewhat random stack of things, mostly that I picked up in various charity shops recently. So we've got Das Boot by Lothar Gunther Buchheim, which my daughter brought to mind recently because she recently watched the movie of Das Boot and really, really enjoyed it. And I saw the book and thought, I've never read that. I should grab that. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to a bit of U-boat action. We've got The Doomsday Conspiracy by Sidney Sheldon. So I think I've never read any Sidney Sheldon. I've got a few, but he's one of those authors that's always intrigued me just because he was like so big during the 80s. I got a lovely vintage paperback edition of To Kill a Mockingbird, which I have read, but I didn't have a copy of, and I just thought this was a really nice, just like classic, simple paperback copy. I got an Alistair Maclean, but not by Alistair Maclean book. So this is Time of the Assassins, written by Alistair MacNeill. So this is one of those cases where I think after Alistair Maclean died, the publishers had a few like outlines he'd written, and they found someone else to write them. The fact that they found someone whose name was so similar to Alistair Maclean's, I actually googled Alistair MacNeill to check that it wasn't a made-up name, but this was actually the guy's name, and he did write some other things as well. So anyway, that looks quite fun. I got this, which I'm really looking forward to reading, so Carla's Choice by Nick Harkaway. So I've read a few things by Nick Harkaway and always enjoyed them. He was the son of John le Carré, and he's now continuing John le Carré's spy series with the character George Smiley. So I've got most of the Smiley books, and I'm intending to read through them in order. So eventually I will get to this one, but it might take a while. I then, just to show that I'm not a complete... what I'm looking for, Philistine, and certainly some of the books I'm going to show you today would suggest that I'm a complete Philistine, but I saw this lovely edition of The Great Gatsby, and I've never read The Great Gatsby, and I was watching something the other day, I forget what now, where somebody referred to it as a crime novel, and that sort of piqued my interest a bit, so I thought I would pick this up, and it's a really nice, really, really nice edition of it. So yes, looking forward to that. And there's obviously The Great Gatsby has been in the news recently, hasn't it? What with President Trump's Great Gatsby themed party. Then in a charity shop in Brighton, I found a comic, which is a comic I used to read. I don't think I particularly read this one, but I used to read the comic that this spun off from, which was The Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers. So this is an issue of The Adventures of Fat Freddy's Cat, which just has little comic strips about Fat Freddy's cat in it. So I'm looking forward to reading that at some point. And then this is one of the books that I ended up buying twice. So in one of my vintage buying sprees, I remember that I wanted a copy of Coma by Robin Cook, because it's one of those books that was really, really big, and I've never read it. I used to have a copy of it, and it's a book that I remember starting when I was quite a young teenager and not getting into. And I'm going to be doing a project soon about books I never finished, that I want to finish. So I wanted to get a copy of Coma, but I wanted a particular edition of it. I wanted the edition that came out just after the movie came out. So I found a copy of it on Vinted and did this thing where I've created a bundle on Vinted with other books from the same seller, and discovered that this seller had these books that I had copies of when I was a kid and remembered reading as a kid. And had like vaguely fond memories of, and really wanted to read again. So I made this bundle of 4 books, paid, and then 2 days later they cancelled the order. So I was without my copy of Coma, and had now been reminded of these other books, and I've ended up picking up those other books as well. So I'll show those in a minute. So I went onto eBay, because all the copies I could then find on Vinted of Coma were quite expensive. So I went onto eBay and looked for a copy and thought I had found, like, checked the ISBN and everything, thought I'd found the copy with the cover I wanted, and this is it, and this is not the cover I wanted. So I've ended up with this copy of Coma, which was like the cheapest one on eBay, but has got the wrong cover. Anyway, like 2 days later, literally 2 days later, I was in one of the local charity shops, and they had a box of, like, basically pay what you want for these books. And they had the blooming copy of Coma that I wanted, didn't they? So I got that one as well for like 50p. So yes, very much looking forward to reading Coma at some point. And I will have to watch the movie as well, which was directed by Michael Crichton, who clearly, you know, went on to bigger things in terms of writing books. But yeah, looking forward to reading that. Right, okay, let me show you those other books then that I didn't get. So this is a little kind of trash. This is a little trash pile. So the 3 books that I discovered were all books, I'm trying to think how to phrase this delicately, that I read at a certain time in my development as a teenager, shall we say, that had slightly racy bits in. And I remember them being quite fun books anyway. So there were two of these I definitely read. The third one I don't think I read, but I definitely had a copy of it. And these are all books I'd picked up, like remaindered, which I don't know if you use that term in the States, but it's basically where a publisher's got too many copies, more copies they can sell, and they end up selling them cheap in kind of funny bookshops. And I think I got these in a local supermarket, actually. So the first one is a kind of vaguely romantic book, but it was quite spicy, I seem to remember. And it was science fiction-y, so I think I justified it to myself at the time. So it's A Woman in Space by, who's it by? Sarah Kavanagh, which is just, that's such a great early 80s cover, isn't it? The next one is The Savage Stars by Richard Rhinesmith, which I remember being quite fun, and also, I have to say, quite spicy. And then the final one is this one, The Amazons of Somilon by Raymond Kaminsky, which, as I say, I don't think I actually read. Now, when I decided to look this book up on Goodreads to decide if I'd read it or not, and there was a review on Goodreads that was really scathing about it and said basically it's a really horrible, over-the-top, like needlessly graphic book, which got my attention. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to get a copy of that. But the reviewer said it's like the worst book in those terms that I've read since I read Zorachus by Mark E. Rogers. So naturally, I then went online and found a copy of Zorachus, which, based on that review at least, is a very graphic and over-the-top like fantasy novel. The back says, I am Zorachus, son of sorcery, son of the sword, called by the dark god to a bloody vengeance. Fear me. So that looks fun. And I think there's a son of Zorachus as well, but I tried to find a copy of that and it was ridiculously expensive. Okay, some more vintage buys then. So these are dodgy. These are dodgy. If you thought the last books were dodgy, these are even dodgier. So I read a book during Garb August called Cotton Moon, which was like a Civil War book that touched on slavery in the States. And for a while I'd been kind of fascinated is probably the wrong word, but intrigued by the fact that there was this wave of books that kind of like exploitative books that kind of like historical novels that kind of cashed in on slavery in a weird way in the States. And I think some of these books at least came out in, I suppose, like a reactionary response to the book and TV series Roots, which was, you know, very much about the roots of African American society, really. But yeah, you've got all these really horribly exploitative books about slavery and, you know, like I suspect deeply racist books in many ways. But I'm kind of, as someone who loves trashy fiction, I'm very intrigued by any kind of book that cashes in on a public interest at the time. So on Vinted again, I discovered this series, which I don't think I'd ever heard of. But it sounds like it is exactly that kind of thing. And there was also, to make it even trashier, there were, I think, 2 movies based on these books with Oliver Reed in them. So the books are, the series is the Dragonard series. So apologies for these covers, which are A, salacious, and B, slightly racist. But let's go through them. I think I haven't probably quite got them in the right order. But anyway, we've got Dragonard, all by Rupert Gilchrist. So we've got Dragonard. The Master of Dragonard Hill, Dragonard Blood, The Siege of Dragonard Hill, and finally Dragonard Rising. So at some point I will read these. Maybe I'll save them for Garb August. Maybe I'll try at least the first one before then. Next up, a book by an author I really, really like, and I've been trying to get hold of a copy of this book for a while, and it turned up really cheap, on Vinted, much cheaper than it normally is, so I grabbed it. So it's by the author Christa Faust, who's the author of the Angel Dare books, which are published by Hard Case Crime, which are really, really fun. It's her novelisation. She's written a bunch of different novelisations, many of which are like pretty much impossible to get. She wrote some Friday the 13th spin-off books, which go for a fortune. This one doesn't go for quite as much, but it goes for it a little bit. Anyway, it's her novelisation of Snakes on Plane, which is a movie I remember like quite enjoying, that my wife absolutely refused to watch because she's terrified of snakes. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what Christa Faust does with that story. And then finally another vintage job lot, which was of books from the Deathland series. So I've talked a few times on the channel about an author called Lawrence James, who was a British author who wrote under a bunch of different pseudonyms, wrote loads of different things. And one of the things he certainly, I think, wrote the early books in this series was the Deathland series, which was published by Gold Eagle, who are also the people who published the later books in the Executioner series by Don Pendleton. They're the publisher that bought the rights. And they're part, I believe, of the same publishing empire as Harlequin in the States. Anyway, I got a pack of 5 of the Deathlands books. I've read the first one, which isn't amongst these, I don't think. I've read the first one and really, really enjoyed it, actually. So looking forward to reading these, and they do have fabulous covers. So we've got North Star Rising, all by James Axler, but not actually by James Axler because it was an obviously made up name. Time Nomads, Red Equinox, Dectra Chain, I've got no idea what Dectra means, and Ice and Fire. Okay, right, let's grab another pack, another stack from the floor. So this is a stack of crime books that I've got from various places, mostly charity shops. I think all charity shops, these ones, or little charity sales. So the first one is a book by Janet Ivanovic. Now, I've never read any Janet Ivanovic and don't really have a great desire to, if I'm honest. But she did write this series of books, the Fox and O'Hare mystery series, with an author I really like, Lee Goldberg. So this is one of those, The Heist. I've always found Lee Goldberg to be an incredibly reliable writer, and I suspect this is one of those series, like the, oh God, I've forgotten his name, the James Patterson books, where like Ivanovic has come up with a vague idea and Lee Goldberg's the person who's actually written the book. So if that is true, I suspect it will be a good time. Next up, a couple of Donald E. Westlakes that I picked up in a charity shop near me. So two of the Dortmunder books. I haven't read any of the Dortmunder books yet, so looking forward to these. So we've got The Road to Ruin and Bad News. These are both nice US editions as well. I do always like it when I find a US edition of a book when I'm in over here in the UK, especially if it's an American book originally. Next up, this is one I got at my local train station, where they have a like a little book sale, and there's another book here somewhere that I got from that same book sale by an author who I've read one book by, which I didn't particularly enjoy, if I'm honest, but I've always wanted to try him again because lots of people seem to like him. So it's a double omnibus, a bumper omnibus of 2 books by Harlan Coben, Deal Breaker and Drop Shot. It's nice and chunky. Next up, a couple of things by James Elroy. So I've read like 2 or 3 things by Elroy, and he's one of those authors I've always meant to read more of. So I picked up this nice, I think this is a paperback first edition actually, from the Mysterious Press of The Big Nowhere. And then also this one, which is more of a kind of historical book, I think, Perfidia, which I think is set on the eve of Pearl Harbor, or around the time of Pearl Harbor. I read shortly after starting the channel, so quite a long time ago, 5 Decembers by James Kestrel, which has a similar kind of theme, which was absolutely fantastic. So interested to see what Elroy does. Okay, we're getting there. Right, got a standalone by Mo Hader, author of the Jack Caffrey books, which I really enjoy. Not read any of her standalones, aside actually from a science fiction novel that she wrote under a different name. So this is, what's it called? Pig Island. She also wrote a book about, I believe, about the siege of Nanking, which is supposed to be like devastating. So I do need to get hold of a copy of that as well. Got one by James Lee Burke. I think this is a standalone, or at least it's not part of the Dave Ruby-Show series. So this is, what's it called? Cimarron Rose. So this was from the book sale in my local supermarket. And then two by Laird Barron. One of the books that I'm still waiting for is another one by Laird Barron, which is the most recent book in the Isaiah Coleridge series. So I talked about this on the channel, the fact that the second book, Black Mountain, which I'd listened to the audiobook of, was really hard to come by in the paperback edition. And I ended up swallowing my pride and just buying a overpriced paperback edition from the US. So anyway, that is Black Mountain, which is absolutely phenomenal. And then I also got, much more reasonably priced, the third book in the series, which is Worse Angels. So looking forward to both of those. And then finally, when I saw this in a charity shop, I had to get it. I've read all of these books, but they're all fantastic, and I didn't have paper copies of any of them. So it's a Ripley Omnibus by Patricia Highsmith, obviously. So it contains The Talented Mr. Ripley, Ripley Underground, Ripley's Game, and The Boy Who Followed Ripley. And I now can't remember if that is all of the Ripley books. I feel like there's a fifth one. When was this published? Yeah, this was published in... I don't know, it doesn't say actually. So yes, I'm fairly sure there's a fifth one. I should know that, having read all of her books not that long ago. But anyway, and really nice omnibus. Okay, some more slightly trashy stuff here. So you'll know that I've showed in previous book hauls these People's Friend pocket novels that I discovered recently and which are a delight. These like a subscription-based series of kind of cosy books, basically. Bit of cosy crime, bit of romance, things like that. I discovered some more of them when I was out and about, and also discovered there's another series of similar books, which I'll show you in a second. So anyway, from the People's Friend Pocket Library series, I've got Miss Fuller's Library, which is by Sarah Swatridge. Robin's Nest by Christina Hollis. And To Catch a Thief by Ewan Smith. They've all got adverts on the back for like the sort of reclining chairs that older people tend to have. And then the competing series, which is actually from the same publisher, so they're both published by DC Thompson, so it's not really a competing series, is the My Weekly pocket novel series. So we've got Sun, Romance and Murder by Cathy Zelenka. They all have these little like one-word blurbs or one-line blurbs. So this one is, it was going to be a holiday to die for. Next up, Putting on Swan Lake by Louise Ryrie, which is a like a ballet book. Next up, Secrets and Lies by Dawn Knox. Does Hazel really know her neighbours? I'm guessing she probably doesn't. And then this one sounds good. So this is The Lost City by Ken Preston. Didn't Ken Preston? No, I'm thinking of a different Ken, I think. It started with a kiss and ended up in the middle of the rainforest. It's a quick read Amazon epic. I like the idea that you can have a quick read epic. It is an epic book that is 180 odd pages. And I didn't realise this. The People's Friend books don't have this, I don't think. But these have got crosswords at the back as well. Fantastic. And a crisscross. Brilliant stuff. Right. And then another one from the book sale in my local supermarket. I've had a few of these before. Haven't read any of them yet. It's the Second Chance at Love series. And this is Refuge in His Arms by Jasmine Craig. So yeah, I've got a few of those in the garage. Right, we're over halfway, you'll be pleased to hear. If you've stuck with me this far, well done. Let me see what the time count is up to. So we are up to 39 minutes. I did predict that this was going to go over an hour, and I suspect it will. I've got my camera plugged in so it doesn't run out of battery. Hopefully it's not going to run out of space on the SD card. Right, let's go through. This is more of a kind of general a general pile. Mostly, well, all from charity shops actually, and some of them are from that charity shop that I've talked about where they do these insane like 8 for £1 or 15 for £1 deals. This is not one of those. This is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. So I listened to the audiobook of this and I loved it. So when I saw a paperback copy for £1, I thought I've got to have that for the shelves so I can reread it at some point. Next, one of those authors I've always wanted to read. This is a book I've never heard of, but it was in one of those 8 for £1 deals, so I grabbed it. It's Inside Outside by Herman Wouk. I think the ones I want to read most by him are The Winds of War and The Caine Mutiny. But this was cheap, so I'll give that a try at some point. I then found 2 really nice vintage crime books by A.A. Fair, which was a pseudonym used by Earl Stanley Gardner. So we've got Fish or Cut Bait and Fools Die on Friday, which as you can see on the cover it says by A.A. Fair, now known to be Earl Stanley Gardner. Right, next up we've got some Georgette Hayes, really nice vintage pan editions, so albeit somewhat falling apart. So we've got These Old Shades, which has got a lovely cover, Cotillion, and The Reluctant Widow. So those are glorious. Another kind of similar like romantic, like historical romance, which I just couldn't resist because it looked fun, is The Game of Kings by Dorothy Dunnett, which according to the Sunday Times is a very fine book. I recommend it for your delight. So if I'm not delighted by it, I'll be writing to the Sunday Times. The New York Times said it was rich, juicy, tasty. It gallops through breathless pages, gallant ladies, lusty outlaws, scheming and noble soldiers. It is expert entertainment. That does. Who wouldn't want to read a book with a blurb that good? That does look good, doesn't it? And then I picked up, so again from that 8 for £1 charity shop, I picked up a while ago in a recent book called Michael Tolliver Lives, which is the Armistead Moppin, the author, returning to his Tales of the City series. They had the first 3 books in the Tales of the City series, which I'm probably going to get in the wrong order now, but I picked those up. I loved these books when I was a teenager. So we've got Tales of the City, and these are the same editions I had back then. More Tales of the City, and Further Tales of the City. So this is basically a kind of broadly comic soap opera set in San Francisco. It was originally published in a San Francisco newspaper, I forget which one, as a kind of serial, like Dickens style serial, I guess, but I remember them being really great. Next up, they also had in that 8 for £1 place a fairly new Jack Reacher book, one of the ones he's written, or was actually written by Andrew Child rather than Lee Child. I haven't tried any of those ones yet, but I've got a big stack of Reachers that I will gradually work my way through. I do quite enjoy a Reacher. So this one is The Secret, if I didn't say that already, I can't remember. I also found a J.T. Edson book, cheap in a charity shop, which has a great cover. The Justice of Company Z is the title, so maybe one for June on the Range next year. And then a couple of 50p finds in another local charity shop. So one is one of the Clive Cussler Numa spin-off books. So this is The Grey Ghost, which is by Clive Cussler and Robin Bursell. Again, suspect Robin Bursell did a lot more of the writing than Clive Cussler did. This is a Fargo adventure. And then this one I have read years ago, and I remember really enjoying this author's early books, which are like very silly, over-the-top, escapist Hollywood-style entertainment. So it's Area 7 by Matthew Riley. He's an Australian writer, but writes these like very American like action thriller style books. Okay, there's just this pile of books down here now, which is making me anxious. Okay, let's move on then. So again on Vinted, I ended up going down a rabbit hole, and this again relates to this project where I want to finish reading books that I started when I was really young and never finished. And one of those books was this book, The Ninja by Eric van Lustbader. Now, through for a variety of reasons, which I can't really explain, I've ended up with loads more Eric van Lustbader books, including one that I've now got 3 times. But not all in this series. So This is his most famous series, so about a Westerner called Nicholas Linear who becomes a ninja, clearly. These were like, they felt like a really big deal when I was a teenager, and I suspect that they're not that great, and I certainly DNF'd this book. But it is apparently, it says on the back, lyrical in its tranquility, remorseless in its violence, stunning in its sensuality, and heart-stopping in its suspense. It explodes through the frontiers of modern fiction with unprecedented power. So that's the first book in the series. The second book in the series is The Miko, which I also had a copy of, and I don't think I ever even started because I'd never finished the first book in the series. The third book then is the one that I've now got three copies of, which is White Ninja. So I got this one in a bundle and then realised after ordering it was a hardback, and I don't particularly like hardbacks, even ones that are slightly smaller like this. So I definitely prefer paperbacks. So I ended up then in another bundle finding another paperback, and then there was another bundle that had other books. I think it had the Miko in that I wanted, and it was really cheap, so I ended up with 2 more copies, both paperback copies of White Ninja. So yes, I have lots of copies of White Ninja now, more than anyone needs. I suspect most people don't even need one. Then there's at least one more. So this one I think is another book in the Nicholas Linear series. The cover, the gold gilt on the cover has worn off, but it's called The Kaisho. I'm getting a sore throat, which you may be able to hear. We've then also got Angel Eyes, which I think is a standalone. Jian, which is another standalone, I think. And French Kiss, which I remember getting out of the library, I think, back in the day. And again, DNFing. Right, we're getting there. Right, another series then. So this is a series that I've read a few of back in my teens and 20s. My dad is a big fan of this series. They are fantastic. They're really, really great. And some of the books that I'm waiting for are also books in this series. Now, normally with older books, and these are books from like the 60s and 70s and 80s, I try to get the original-ish editions, but there's actually some newer editions of these books which are really nice and were really cheap as well, so I've got some of those. So the series is the Modesty Blaze series by Peter O'Donnell. So it began life, I believe, as a strip cartoon, so a serialised cartoon in a British newspaper. I can't remember which one. There was a movie with Monica Vitti and Dirk Bogarde, which is very camp and over the top, but they are basically like female spy novels, like a female version of James Bond, but kind of they do kind of camp things up a bit. They're a little bit over the top, but in a really, really fun way. So anyway, I've got two vintage ones. So Last Day in Limbo and Sabretooth. So this same model on both. He obviously made a little career of being Modesty Blaze on book covers. And then I've got here 4 of the newer editions, which, as I say, are really nicely done. So I, Lucifer, Dead Man's Handle, Dragon's Claw, and Cobra Trap. So very much looking forward to diving back into the world of Modesty Blaze soon. And then the rest of the stuff I've got is kind of science fiction, which, given that I don't really read much science fiction, may seem strange, but for various reasons, again kind of partly relating to that project of wanting to read stuff I haven't finished, I've ended up with a few things. But the first one actually is not science fiction. It's the other book that I got at the same time as the Harlan Coben one. So this is a Nio Marsh omnibus, which has got 3 of the who's her detective, Roderick Allen books. So Off With His Head, Singing in the Shrouds, and Full Scent. I do have a load of Nio Marsh books that are in much nicer editions than this, that Heidi sent me a little while ago. So I definitely need to read some of those soon. Right, these are all kind of sci-fi. So the first one is Alien by Alan Dean Foster. So I picked up recently a copy of Aliens by Alan Dean Foster and thought I needed a copy of Alien to go with it. I read this book 2 or 3 times, I think, as a teenager. It's fantastic. And then the first 2 books in the Pendergast series, which I'm really looking forward to rereading. I have read both of these. Someone, and apologies, I meant to check what your name was so I could say it in the video and I forgot, on Instagram has been suggesting to me that I should try these. I've got what is, I think, the third book in the series. So anyway, it's Relic by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child, and these are both nice step back covers. And then Reliquary, I can't speak, Reliquary by the same authors. And then I've got a nice little military sci-fi trilogy, which I think is a prequel trilogy to another series of books by the same author. But I think you can read these without reading the other books. And I'm going to get them in the wrong order, so apologies. But they look really fun. So it's Andromeda's Choice, Andromeda's War, and Andromeda's Fall, all by William C. Dietz, or Dietz. And then finally, slightly different style of science fiction. Well, not finally, actually, because I've got another pile here, I'm afraid. A different style of science fiction, The Drought by JG Ballard, which is actually a republished edition, like an expanded edition of another book by JG Ballard, which I forget the name of. Is it The Drowned World? I think it's The Drowned World. Anyway, I do quite like Ballard stuff. It's weird, but always interesting. And this is quite a nicely done edition as well. Okay, right, we're on to the final stack now. Oh, okay, yeah, we are on to the final stack now, but there's a mixture of things in here. So, I recently put up a Commando Comics book haul video where I talked about having gone to this like local toy fair with my dad. As well as getting the Commando comics, I got some gorgeous vintage sci-fi there. The one that really attracted me was a book I've actually already got a nice vintage copy of, but this one is a different vintage copy and it's really lovely. And it's one of my favourite books. So it's I Am Legend by Richard Matheson, which is just fantastic. And then there was another Richard Matheson book, which I think is short stories, yeah, The Shores of Space. Now, I do have the Penguin Classics Richard Matheson collection, so it may be that I've already read these stories, but it was such a nice edition, and I did that thing of going, how much do you want for all five? And the price was very reasonable, so I got all five. So then three other things. So The Man Who Came Back by Neil Thanet. This is my favourite cover, I think. The Monster from Earth's End. Yes, The Monster from Earth's End by Murray Leinster. And Christmas Eve by K.M. Kornbluth, which is a futuristic war story. Oh, right, we're getting there. Okay, next up then. So this is a series of books that I remember, like, some of my friends reading when I was a kid, and I never read them, and have always kind of had a nagging suspicion that maybe I would like them. They are post-apocalyptic science fiction. I think not as exploitative as something like Deathlands, but they do look quite fun. Annoyingly, one of these books is in like a different edition to the others, but aside from that, they look fun. I do already have the first book, but this was a bundle, so I got the lot. So it's the Amtrak Wars is the series, which has always amused me as a title, because isn't Amtrak like the main train carrier in the US? I think they're written by a British guy, so maybe he didn't realise that. So anyway, book one is Cloud Warrior. These are all by Patrick Tilley. Book two is First Family. Book three is Iron Master. Book four, which has the best cover, I think, is Blood River. Book five, which is the different edition, which has a terrible cover, is Deathbringer. It's a good title, though. Technology versus Earth Magic. Oh no, are these books got wizards in? Maybe they've got wizards in, and I'm therefore not going to enjoy them. We shall see. And then finally, with a very cool cover, Earth Thunder. That's a great sci-fi vehicle on the cover there, isn't it? Right, the final stack then. So this is, again, some books. So one of these books I definitely tried to read as a teenager and DNF'd, and ended up swapping with a school friend for something else, but I can't remember. I can't remember if this was the book I got in the swap, or if I swapped this for something from him. But anyway, I want to try it again. It just bugs me that I didn't finish it. So it's Magician by Raymond D. Feist, which, given what I've just said about wizards, maybe it's a bad idea, and it's huge as well. How many pages is it? 600. It's nearly 700 pages. So actually, it's not as long as it looks. Anyway, epic heroic fantasy in the great tradition. I don't like wizards, I don't like fantasy, but I bought a 700-page fantasy book called Magician. And then in the same bundle, and this was what attracted me to the bundle in the first place, another series of books that I remember people reading and really enjoying when I was a kid. I definitely had at least one of these books, and I think it was the second book in the series, which is probably not why I never read it. So anyway, the series is the Shannara series by Terry Brooks, so a fantasy trilogy which apparently just shamelessly rips off Lord of the Rings. And given that I didn't finish Lord of the Rings, again, maybe it wasn't the best idea, but I like the idea of rip-off books, as you will know. So anyway, first one is The Sword of Shannara. The second one, which I think is the one I had, is The Elfstones of Shannara, which has got a great cover. It just looks like the cover of like a D&D module or something like that, doesn't it? And then finally, The Wish Song of Shannara. And then they also had in this bundle what is, I think, the second book in another Shannara trilogy, The Druid of Shannara. So, we are done. Thank goodness. If there's anyone still watching, well done. Let's do a quick time check. So we are at, we didn't make an hour. We are at 55.5 minutes. Oh, right, I need a cup of tea. You probably need a cup of tea as well. So thank you very much indeed for watching. I will do a mini book haul when the other books come in, which includes, as I've said, I think it's basically some Sweet Valley Highs, some Modesty Blazes, and one other book for that Books I Want to Finish One Day series, which is a kids war novel, shall we say. I'll tease it and won't tell you what it actually is, but very trashy in the same vein as the kind of things I like. So I will leave it there and say, well, let me know if you've read any of these 130 books and what you thought of them. And as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope you're safe and well out there. I hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.